In 2003, the first Call of Duty got released. And to be honest, I never played it, and most likely you also didn't. But what's certain, it changed everything about how we experienced war games. You played as 3 different nameless soldiers across World War II's most iconic battles. Private Martin from the American 101st Airborne, Sergeant Evans from the British SAS, and Senior Sergeant Voronin from the Soviet Red Army. Each campaign had its own distinct feel and weapons, from the Thompson submachine gun to the Sten gun to the PPSH-41. It even had a multiplayer feature. Up to 32 players could battle it out on maps like Carentan, Dawnville, and Pavlov, each based on the single-player campaign locations. You could choose between American, British, or German forces, each with their own authentic weapons and equipment. The multiplayer has games like Deathmatch, Team Deathmatch, and the one we all know, the infamous Search and Destroy. I probably don't even have to explain it. Well, I do it for people, I guess, living under a rock. Pretty simple, one team has to plant explosives, while the other needs to defend. And lastly, there was Behind Enemy Lines, where you had to infiltrate and escape enemy territory. The multiplayer was really good. Maps were designed with multiple routes and strategic choke points that encouraged squad-based gameplay. It wasn't just about getting kills. It was about working together to complete objectives and control key areas. Critics loved it. Players were obsessed, and nobody expected it to spawn a franchise that would dominate gaming for the next 2 decades. Call of Duty 2 came out in 2005, and honestly, this one actually mattered because it launched with the Xbox 360. So a lot more people played this compared to the first one. It perfected the World War II formula and showed what next-gen gaming could really do. Better graphics, way bigger battles, and a health system that changed everything. No more running around looking for medkits like some scavenger hunt, just duck behind cover and magically heal up. Revolutionary stuff for 2005. You played as 3 different soldiers again, but this time the campaigns felt way more epic. As Private Randall in the British campaign, you fought across North Africa in the desert heat, dealing with tank battles and German Afrika Korps. The Russian campaign put you in the boots of Sergeant Vasily Kozlov during the Battle of Stalingrad and Moscow, with brutal urban warfare and sniper duels. But the American campaign with Corporal Bill Taylor was the real showstopper. D-Day landings, capturing Pointe du Hoc, and fighting through the French countryside. The multiplayer was solid too, supporting up to 64 players on PC and featuring classic modes like Team Deathmatch, Capture the Flag, and Search and Destroy. Maps like Tujan, Carentan, and Burgundy became fan favorites, each designed with multiple routes and strategic positions that rewarded teamwork over individual heroics. It was truly a masterpiece. Console players fell in love because it was their first real taste of next-gen Call of Duty, and it set the gold standard for WPU shooters that nobody would match for years. This was peak World War II gaming, and everyone knew it. If you owned an Xbox 360 in 2005, you owned Call of Duty 2. Call of Duty 3 came out a year later in 2006 and hit the first crack in the armor, and honestly, this is where things started getting messy. The first COD not made by Infinity Ward, Treyarch took over and you could immediately tell something was off. While Infinity Ward was busy working on something that would change everything, Treyarch got stuck making another World War II game that nobody really asked for. The big selling point was 4-player split-screen co-op, which was actually pretty cool. You could play through the entire campaign with friends on the same couch. But everything else felt rushed and uninspired. The graphics looked dated even for 2006. The AI was dumber than Call of Duty 2. And the weapons felt like they had no impact. They tried to add cinematic moments with quick-time events, but they felt forced and broke the flow of combat. It was definitely disappointing compared to Call of Duty 2, and fans complained it lacked the magic and innovation of the first 2 games. Activision released the first Modern Warfare in 2007, and it changed everything. And I mean everything. This is the game that made Call of Duty what it is today. No more Nazis, no more World War II. Infinity Ward said, screw it. We're doing Modern Warfare now. CIA, terrorists, nuclear threats, and the kind of political thriller storyline that would make Tom Clancy jealous. You played as 2 main characters, Soap MacTavish, a British SAS soldier, and Paul Jackson, a US Marine. The campaign took you from the Middle East to Russia, following Captain Price and his mustache through missions that felt like you were starring in your own action movie. The story involved a Russian ultranationalist named Imran Zakhaev, trying to restore the Soviet Union, and your job was to stop him before he nuked half the world. The campaign was absolutely perfect. Memorable characters like Captain Price, Gaz, and the villain Zakhaev, who you literally couldn't kill. Incredible set pieces like the AC-130 gunship mission Death from Above, where you rained hell from the sky, the sniper mission All Ghillied Up, where you crawled through Chernobyl in a ghillie suit, and that nuke scene in shock and awe that left everyone speechless. Seriously, if you played this game, you remember exactly where you were when that nuclear explosion went off, and you had to crawl through the aftermath as a dying soldier. But the real revolution was multiplayer, and this is where COD became an addiction. Perks like Stopping Power, Juggernaut, and Martyrdom. Kill streaks like UAV, Airstrike, and the legendary helicopter that everyone feared. Custom classes where you could finally build your perfect loadout. And Prestige Mode, the genius system that made you restart your progress just to get a shiny new emblem and bragging rights. It weaponized progression and made addiction feel rewarding. The maps were legendary. Crash, Backlot, Crossfire, Shipment, and Vacant. Each one was perfectly designed for different playstyles. The weapon progression system with challenges for every gun, camo unlocks, and that satisfying ding when you leveled up. Everyone was screaming into their mics, sharing montages on YouTube, and grinding for days just to hit max prestige. This wasn't just a game, it was a cultural phenomenon that changed shooters forever. It proved that Modern Warfare could be more exciting than World War II, that progression systems could keep players hooked for months, and that Call of Duty was no longer just another shooter, it was the shooter. World at War was Treyarch's redemption arc, and honestly, they needed it after the disaster that was Call of Duty 3. This time they said, forget about playing it safe, we're going back to World War II, but we're making it darker and more brutal than anything anyone had ever seen before. You played as two soldiers in the most savage theaters of World War II. Private Miller fighting with the Marines in the Pacific against the Japanese, and Private Dmitry Petrenko battling with the Red Army on the Eastern Front against the Germans. The Pacific campaign was absolutely insane. Flamethrowers literally melted enemies into screaming torches, limbs got blown off by grenades, and the Japanese would hide in trees and spider holes to ambush you. The Peleliu and Okinawa missions were nightmare fuel that showed the Pacific War's true horror. But the Soviet campaign was even more brutal. You fought through Stalingrad, Berlin, and the Silo Heights with Sergeant Reznov, who became a fan-favorite character. The campaign pulled no punches. You'd see German soldiers burning alive, civilians caught in crossfire, and the desperate final push into Hitler's bunker. This wasn't your typical heroic World War II story. This was war at its most savage and unforgiving. The multiplayer was solid, but nothing special. Here's the twist that changed everything. Hidden in the campaign's final level was a secret that would become bigger than COD itself. After beating the campaign, you unlocked Nacht der Untoten. 4 players, 1 bunker, unlimited waves of undead Nazis. Zombies mode was supposed to be just a throwaway bonus, something fun the developers threw in because they thought it would be cool. Nobody expected it to become a phenomenon. It became so popular that some people bought Call of Duty games just for the Zombies mode. Treyarch had accidentally created lightning in a bottle, and they've been chasing that high ever since. Modern Warfare 2 was the sequel that broke the internet, and I'm not exaggerating, this game was everywhere. On the news, in political debates, and dominating every Xbox Live party chat. After Modern Warfare 1 set the bar impossibly high, somehow they managed to jump over it while doing a backflip. The campaign was absolutely insane. The story was a wild ride about Russian ultranationalists invading America, a rogue general betraying everyone, and the most shocking airport level in gaming history. It was so controversial, countries legit banned it. But the real story was about betrayal. Ghost, Soap, and Price versus General Shepard in the most betrayal-heavy campaign ever created. The final mission where you chase Shepard through Afghanistan and Price throws a knife into his eye? Pure cinema. But multiplayer was where the real chaos lived. This is where COD multiplayer became completely unhinged. Akimbo 1887 shotguns that could snipe people across the map, Commando Pro that let you knife someone from 10 feet away, noob tubes with one-man army that gave you infinite grenades, and the UMP-45 that killed faster than most assault rifles. It was simultaneously the most fun and most broken COD ever made. The maps were legendary. Rust for 1 versus 1 quickscopes, Terminal for search and destroy, High-Rise for trick-shotting, and Nuketown. Wait, that's Black Ops, but you get the idea. The kill streaks were insane. 7 kills got you a Harrier, 9 kills got you a Pave Low, and 25 kills got you a tactical nuke that ended the game instantly. People would camp in corners for 20 minutes just trying to get that nuke. Everyone has a love-hate relationship with this one, and in my opinion, it was brilliant. You'd rage quit because someone cross-mapped you with akimbo shotguns, then immediately start another match because the game was just that addictive. It was the peak of COD's Wild West era before developers started caring about balance and fairness. Sometimes broken is better. Black Ops was the game that nobody saw coming, and honestly, it messed with people's heads in the best possible way. After Modern Warfare 2's explosive action, Treyarch said, "Hold up, what if we made a psychological thriller disguised as a shooter?" Vietnam, brainwashing, and the most unreliable protagonist in gaming history, this wasn't your typical COD campaign. You played as Alex Mason, or did you? The entire story is told through Mason's interrogation sessions, where he's strapped to a chair while mysterious voices question him about the numbers. You're never sure what's real, what's a memory, and what's just his broken mind filling in the gaps. The campaign takes you through the Bay of Pigs invasion, the Vietnam War, and a conspiracy involving Soviet sleeper agents trying to poison America's water supply with deadly Nova 6 gas. But the story was genuinely brilliant. The multiplayer was where Treyarch really proved themselves. They introduced combat training with bots, so you could actually practice without getting destroyed by 12-year-olds screaming racial slurs. Theater mode lets you record, edit, and share your best moments. Basically, YouTube built into the game. The weapons were good, and the maps, like Nuketown, Firing Range, and Summit, became instant classics. The Create a Class system was refined, the kill streaks were balanced, and the overall gameplay felt tight and competitive. No more akimbo shotguns or commando lunging, this was COD multiplayer at its most fair and skill-based. And then there was zombies. The Easter eggs were insane. Players spent months trying to figure out the storylines, decode the radios, and unlock secret achievements. The zombies community became obsessed with the mythology, creating theories about Element 115, Group 935, and the connection between all the maps. Most people consider this the peak of COD storytelling, and they're not wrong. It proved that Call of Duty could be more than just shoot the bad guys. The campaign made you question everything, the multiplayer was perfectly balanced, and zombies became a cultural phenomenon. This was Treyarch at their absolute best. Modern Warfare 3 was the trilogy's conclusion that somehow felt incomplete, and that's probably the most frustrating thing about it. This was supposed to be the epic finale to the greatest shooter trilogy ever made, but it felt like Infinity Ward was playing it safe when they should have been going all out. The campaign was absolutely epic in scope. World War III breaks out, and you're fighting in New York, London, Paris, Berlin, and Russia as the world literally burns around you. You played as multiple characters again. Soap MacTavish, Captain Price, Yuri, a former associate of Makarov, and various soldiers from different armies. The story picked up right where MW2 left off, with Makarov's Russian forces invading Europe, while Price and Soap hunt him down for revenge. Every mission was a blockbuster moment, and the global scale made it feel like the world was actually ending. But here's the tragedy that broke everyone's hearts. Soap dies. Not in some heroic sacrifice saving the world, but from his injuries in a random safe house in Prague. Captain Price tries to save him, but there's nothing he can do. People who had been playing as Soap since 2007 were devastated. But the multiplayer felt safe after MW2's beautiful chaos. And that's where the disappointment crept in. Don't get me wrong, it was solid. The maps were great, the weapon balance was good, and they fixed most of MW2's broken mechanics. They introduced Kill Confirmed, which was actually brilliant. The kill streaks were redesigned into 3 categories: Assault, Support, and Specialist. The weapon proficiency system let you unlock attachments by using guns, which was cool. Survival mode was basically a co-op version of zombies, but with regular enemies instead of undead. The problem was that fans wanted innovation. Not just MW2, but fixed. MW3 felt like playing with training wheels. It was a good game, but it wasn't revolutionary. Black Ops 2 was the future warfare game that got everything right, and I mean everything. This is the game that proved Call of Duty could evolve beyond modern warfare without losing its identity. Set in 2025, Treyarch took a massive risk by jumping into the future, and somehow they nailed it perfectly. You played as David Mason, son of Alex Mason from the first Black Ops, dealing with the consequences of his father's actions while fighting threats of the future. The story jumped between the 1980s and 2025, connecting the Cold War past to a high-tech future. In the past, you played as Alex Mason and Frank Woods dealing with the Nicaraguan conflict and a villain named Raul Menendez. In the future, you played as David trying to stop that same Menendez from starting a global war using hacked American drones. The campaign had multiple endings based on decisions you made throughout the story. But the multiplayer was where Black Ops 2 really shined. The Pick-10 Create a Class system was revolutionary. Instead of being locked into specific slots, you had 10 points to spend however you wanted. The maps were incredible. Nuketown 2025, Raid, Standoff, Hijacked, and Yemen became instant classics. They introduced League Play, which was basically ranked competitive COD. You could play with pro rules, climb divisions, and actually compete at a high level. The competitive scene exploded because of this game. Tournaments, professional leagues, and streaming all took off. This was the game that made COD's esports legitimate. And then there was Zombies, which went completely insane. Transit was this massive map where you rode a bus between different areas, fighting zombies and building contraptions. But then came the DLC maps that were absolute perfection. This was arguably one of the best CODs ever made. Ghosts released in 2013 and was the forgotten experiment that nobody talks about. And honestly, that's probably for the best. After the incredible success of Black Ops 2, Infinity Ward decided to completely start over with a new universe, new characters, and a completely different tone. The campaign was actually decent if you gave it a chance. America gets invaded by a South American federation called the Federation, and you play as Logan Walker, part of an elite unit called the Ghosts. The story follows you and your brother Hesh as you fight as the underdog against an enemy that's actually winning. For once, America wasn't dominating, cities were destroyed, the military was scattered, and you were literally fighting for survival. The villain, Gabriel Rourke, was genuinely threatening. He used to be a ghost until he was captured, brainwashed, and turned into a weapon against his former teammates. The personal vendetta between him and your father, Elias Walker, gave the story some emotional weight. And then there was Riley, the German shepherd who became the game's biggest star. That dog had more personality than most COD protagonists. The missions where you controlled Riley were actually fun, and when he got hurt, players cared more about saving the dog than completing the objective. The graphics were impressive for 2013, especially on next-gen consoles. But the multiplayer felt different in all the wrong ways. The maps were way too big, like stupidly big. Maps like Stonehaven and Siege were massive, which sounds good in theory, but made the gameplay slow and boring. You'd spend half the match just running around looking for enemies. They did introduce some interesting mechanics, dynamic map events where you could trigger earthquakes, floods, or building collapses. Extinction mode replaced zombies with aliens, which was actually pretty fun but felt like a cheap knockoff. The new game modes like Cranked and Blitz had potential but couldn't save the overall experience. Advanced Warfare was the jetpack revolution that divided the fanbase right down the middle. And honestly, it's still a controversial topic today. After the disaster that was Ghosts, Sledgehammer Games decided to go full sci-fi with exosuits, wall running, boost jumping, and Kevin Spacey as the corporate villain. It was the biggest risk COD had taken since Modern Warfare, and the results were complicated. The campaign was surprisingly good, way better than it had any right to be. You played as Private Jack Mitchell, a soldier who loses his arm in combat and gets recruited by Atlas Corporation, a private military company run by Jonathan Irons. The story was a corporate conspiracy thriller about how private military companies could become more powerful than governments. Irons starts as your savior, giving you a high-tech prosthetic arm and advanced exosuit, but gradually reveals himself as a megalomaniac trying to control the world. Kevin Spacey was phenomenal as the villain. This was before all his real-life controversies, and he brought that House of Cards energy to the role. The exosuits changed everything about how COD played. You could boost jump over buildings, dodge mid-air, slam down from above, and wall run across entire maps. It felt like playing as a superhero, which was either amazing or terrible depending on your perspective. But multiplayer was where the real controversy lived. And boy did it live there. Half the players loved the freedom and speed. The movement system was incredibly fluid once you mastered it, and the verticality added a whole new layer of strategy. Maps like Comeback, Detroit, and Biolab were designed specifically for 3D movement. The weapon variance system was controversial, but interesting. You could get different versions of the same gun with unique stats and visual designs. The other half wanted boots on the ground and hated every second of it. Traditional COD players felt alienated by the crazy movement system. The game required learning entirely new skills. Map awareness wasn't just about corners and sightlines anymore, you had to think in 3 dimensions. The supply drop system was another divisive addition. You could earn or buy loot boxes that contained weapon variants, clothing, and other cosmetics. It was COD's first real dive into microtransactions, and it felt predatory. Some weapon variants were objectively better than the base versions, which meant paying players had actual advantages. Looking back, Advanced Warfare was probably better than people gave it credit for. The campaign was excellent, the movement system was innovative, and the production values were through the roof. But sometimes being technically impressive isn't enough. You need to understand your audience, and Sledgehammer maybe understood technology better than they understood Call of Duty fans. Black Ops 3 went full cyberpunk. This was the attempt to follow up the masterpiece that was Black Ops 2, and somehow they managed to create the most confusing campaign in COD history while also delivering some of the best multiplayer and zombies content ever made. It's honestly impressive how they got it so right and so wrong at the same time. The campaign was absolute nonsense. You played as a customizable soldier who gets their limbs blown off in the first mission, then gets cybernetic enhancements and neural implants that connect you to the DNI, direct neural interface. The story involved AI consciousness, simulated realities, and a plot that literally takes place inside someone's dying mind. Most people just skipped the cutscenes after the first few missions and treated it like a co-op shooter. Speaking of co-op, the campaign did support 4-player online co-op, which was actually pretty fun when you ignored the story and just focused on shooting robots with your friends. The cybernetic abilities were cool in gameplay. You could hack enemy robots, see through walls, and use various tech powers. But here's the thing. Everything else was absolutely incredible. The multiplayer was some of the tightest, most balanced COD had ever been. Wall running felt smooth and natural, not like the chaotic jetpack madness of Advanced Warfare. The movement system was perfect. It was fast-paced but controlled. The specialist system was genius. Instead of just picking a class, you chose a specialist character with unique weapons and abilities. Each specialist had a personality and backstory, which was ironic since they had more character development than the entire campaign cast. The weapon balance was fantastic. Every gun felt satisfying to use, the attachments were meaningful, and the Create a Class system with the Pick-10 format returned from Black Ops 2. The maps were excellently designed for the movement system. Combine, Fringe, Hunted, and Nuketown were all instant classics that rewarded different playstyles. But Zombies was where Black Ops 3 reached God-tier status. Shadows of Evil was the launch map, set in a 1940s noir city with Lovecraftian horror elements. You played as 4 sinners trapped in a purgatory dimension, fighting zombies and ancient creatures. The map was gorgeous, the atmosphere was perfect, and the Easter egg was incredibly complex. Jeff Goldblum, Heather Graham, and other celebrities voiced the characters, giving it that Hollywood production value. Infinite Warfare was the space opera that nobody asked for but everyone should have played. And it's honestly one of the biggest tragedies in COD history. This game got buried by internet hate before anyone even played it. You played as Captain Nick Reyes, a space marine fighting in a war between Earth and Mars. The story was about the Settlement Defense Front, SDF, a militant group of Mars colonists led by Admiral Selene Koch, who wanted to destroy Earth and claim all the solar system's resources. It sounds like generic sci-fi, but the execution was incredible. The zero-gravity combat was incredible. You could use your thruster pack to navigate asteroid fields, fight on the outside of spaceships, and engage in dogfights between planets. The set pieces were spectacular. The assault on the SDF shipyard, the moon base infiltration, and that final battle on a collapsing ship were all movie-quality moments. But the community had already decided they hated it before it even launched. The reveal trailer became YouTube's most disliked video at the time, with millions of dislikes and comments screaming about boots on the ground. People were tired of jetpacks and future warfare after Advanced Warfare and Black Ops 3. The backlash was so intense that it became a meme to hate on Infinite Warfare. People wanted to go back to modern or historical warfare. The fact that it was bundled with Modern Warfare Remastered made it even worse. Most people bought it just for the remaster and never touched the main game. The multiplayer was solid, with smooth movement, good weapon balance, and interesting maps. The combat rigs, specialists, were well designed, and the customization options were extensive. World War II was the apology tour that brought the franchise back to its roots. And honestly, it felt like Sledgehammer Games was saying, "We're sorry for Advanced Warfare," in the most obvious way possible. After years of jetpacks, robots, and space combat, they went back to Normandy, back to what worked. It was the safest possible choice. You played as Red Daniels, a farm boy from Texas who gets thrown into the European theater with the 1st Infantry Division. The campaign followed your squad through iconic World War II battles: D-Day, the Battle of the Bulge, the liberation of Paris, and the final push into Germany. The campaign was solid, but it felt like a greatest hits compilation of every World War II movie ever made. The Holocaust subplot was handled respectfully, but felt obligatory, and the whole thing played out exactly like you'd expect. The multiplayer was classic Call of Duty stripped down to its essentials. The Create a Class system was replaced with divisions: infantry, airborne, armored, mountain, and expeditionary, each with their own weapons and abilities. It was simpler than previous games, which was both refreshing and limiting. War mode was genuinely innovative and probably the best thing about the game. These were large-scale objective-based matches that felt like mini-campaigns. It was brilliant and should have been the main focus of the marketing. Headquarters was a cool social space where you could interact with other players, open supply drops, and test weapons. It was basically a pre-game lobby disguised as a military base, complete with firing ranges, score streak testing areas, and even a 1-versus-1 pit where you could duel other players. Nazi zombies returned. The Final Reich was set in a Bavarian village with classic zombie mechanics. Mystery Box, Pack-a-Punch, and buildable wonder weapons, but something still felt missing throughout the entire experience. The campaign was competent but uninspired, the multiplayer was solid but safe, and even the zombies mode felt like it was going through the motions. You could tell the developers were terrified of taking any risks after the backlash to the previous 3 games. Black Ops 4 was the controversial experiment that removed the most important part, and honestly, it was one of the ballsiest moves in COD history. Activision said, screw it, we're not making a campaign. No single-player story, no cinematic moments, no campaign at all. The decision to cut the campaign was apparently made late in development. Rumors suggested they were working on a campaign but couldn't get it to work properly, so they scrapped it entirely and doubled down on the multiplayer experience. The backlash was immediate and brutal. People felt betrayed, especially after World War II had a solid campaign the year before. The idea of paying $60 for a game without a single-player story felt like a ripoff to many players. The marketing tried to spin it as the most ambitious multiplayer experience ever, but that didn't help the perception. But here's the thing. The gameplay was incredibly tight. Maybe the best COD multiplayer had been in years. The specialists returned from Black Ops 3 but were completely redesigned and balanced. Each specialist felt unique and powerful without being game-breaking. The maps were excellently designed for the specialist abilities. The weapon balance was fantastic. Every gun had a purpose, and the attachment system was refined and meaningful. Blackout was surprisingly good, a battle royale that actually felt like Call of Duty instead of just another PUBG clone. The map combined locations from previous Black Ops games. Nuketown, Raid, Firing Range, and other iconic spots were scattered across a massive landscape. It had 100 players, vehicles, and a constantly shrinking circle, but it maintained that fast-paced COD feel. It felt like COD's answer to Fortnite and PUBG, but with the gunplay and pace that made Call of Duty special. The weapon progression system carried over from multiplayer, so your battle royale experience improved your overall unlocks. Zombies was absolutely incredible, with 4 maps at launch, more than any previous COD. Looking back, Black Ops 4 was ahead of its time. The focus on multiplayer content, live service updates, and battle royale integration became the standard for future COD games. But at the time, it felt like a risky experiment that alienated as many players as it attracted. Modern Warfare was the soft reboot that saved the franchise. And honestly, it came at the perfect time. This wasn't just a return to Modern Warfare. It was a complete reimagining of what Call of Duty could be. You played as various characters across a campaign that wasn't afraid to show the ugly, uncomfortable side of modern conflict. Captain Price returned as the gruff SAS operator we all remembered, but older, more weathered, and carrying the weight of decades of Black Ops missions. Farah Karim was a freedom fighter in the fictional country of Urzikstan, fighting against both Russian occupation and chemical weapon attacks. Alex was a CIA operative caught between duty and conscience, questioning whether the ends justify the means. The Clean House mission became legendary almost immediately. You played as Price and his SAS team clearing a London townhouse suspected of housing terrorists. But the real game changer was the multiplayer, which felt fresh for the first time in years. Cross-platform play united console and PC players in a way that seemed impossible just a few years earlier. PlayStation, Xbox, and PC players could all play together seamlessly, which was revolutionary for the franchise. The weapon customization was revolutionary. Gunsmith gave you unprecedented control over your weapons with 5 attachment slots and dozens of options for each slot. You could turn an assault rifle into a sniper rifle or a submachine gun into a close-quarters monster. Every attachment had trade-offs. Better range might mean worse mobility. Higher damage might mean more recoil. It was the most detailed weapon customization system COD had ever seen. The graphics were absolutely incredible. The lighting was photorealistic. The character models were detailed beyond belief, and the environments were stunning. The post-launch support was incredible. Free maps, new weapons, constant updates, and seasonal content kept the game fresh for months. The Battle Pass system was fair and rewarding, and the cosmetic options were extensive without being pay to win. It brought back lapsed fans, attracted new players, and reminded everyone why they fell in love with the franchise in the first place. Modern Warfare 2019 was truly a successful reboot. In 2020, Warzone dropped, and it was surprisingly free to play, 150 players. And it exploded into a cultural phenomenon that dominated streaming and social media. You dropped into Verdansk, a massive map that combined locations from previous Modern Warfare games into one cohesive battlefield. The Gulag was genius. Instead of spectating when you died, you fought another dead player for a chance to respawn. Loadout drops let you use your custom weapons instead of just scavenging, and the cash system added strategy beyond just shooting. You could buy teammates back, purchase kill streaks, and even get intel on the next circle. It brought millions of new players to the franchise. It started as a side mode but became the main attraction. Black Ops Cold War was the bridge between past and future that somehow worked. Set in the 1980s, it connected the original Black Ops to Black Ops II with a story about Reagan, espionage, and Cold War paranoia. The campaign was great. Multiple endings, meaningful choices, and that twist that nobody saw coming. You could create your own character and make decisions that actually mattered. Multiplayer was fast, fun, and felt like classic COD with modern polish. Zombies returned to round-based survival with Die Machine and Firebase Z. It launched alongside Modern Warfare's continued success, but it held its own. Vanguard was the latest World War II attempt that landed with a thud. The campaign followed 4 soldiers from different fronts. The story was told through flashbacks as they're captured and interrogated by a Nazi war criminal trying to create a Fourth Reich. It sounds interesting on paper, but the execution was messy. The characters felt generic. Multiplayer launched with destructible environments and combat pacing that let you choose between tactical, assault, or blitz modes depending on player count. Champion Hill was a tournament-style mode that nobody asked for, but the real disaster was zombies. They completely abandoned round-based survival for an objective-based mode that felt like a generic co-op shooter. Most people skipped it, forgot it existed, or actively disliked it. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't good either. Just another entry in a franchise that was starting to feel tired and uninspired. Modern Warfare 2 was the sequel that tried to recapture the magic of 2009. The campaign followed Task Force 141, Captain Price, Soap MacTavish, Ghost, and new team member Alejandro Vargas, as they hunted down Iranian Major Hassan Ziani and Mexican cartel leader El Sin Nombre. The story took you from Amsterdam to Mexico to Chicago with spectacular set pieces, including a prison break, a cartel compound raid, and a final mission in a Chicago skyscraper. Ghost finally got character development, Soap was more experienced, and the banter between characters felt natural, but the campaign was short, and the story felt rushed. Multiplayer was solid with refined mechanics from 2019, beautiful new maps, and the return of classic modes. Gunsmith 2.0 expanded weapon customization even further, and the new perk system divided abilities into packages. The graphics were stunning, the sound design was perfect, but something felt missing. It was a competent sequel that played things safe after the risks of the previous generation. Most people liked it, but didn't love it. It was good Modern Warfare without being great Modern Warfare. Warzone 2.0 was the complete overhaul that nobody asked for. Instead of updating the original, they scrapped everything and started fresh with Al-Mazrah, a new map inspired by Middle Eastern geography. The Gulag became a 2 versus 2 experience where you had to work with a random teammate, which sounds good in theory, but was frustrating in practice. They added proximity chat so you could hear enemies talking, which led to hilarious and terrifying moments. The new circle system split players into multiple zones that eventually converged, and strongholds offered high-value loot with AI enemies guarding them. DMZ mode turned Warzone into a PvEVP extraction shooter where you completed contracts and extracted with loot, but the changes divided the community. Some loved the innovation, others missed the simplicity of the original. The UI was confusing. It was ambitious and technically impressive, but it felt like fixing something that wasn't broken. The player count dropped, the reception was mixed, and it struggled to find its identity in a crowded battle royale market. Modern Warfare 3 was the continuation that felt like expensive DLC. Basically Modern Warfare 2 Part 2 with a short campaign, nostalgic multiplayer maps, and open-world zombies that nobody wanted. The story was rushed, the campaign was over in 4 hours, and the whole package felt incomplete. Multiplayer was fine, but most maps were just remasters from previous games. Most fans were disappointed. Critics were lukewarm, but it still sold millions because it had Call of Duty on the cover, a lazy sequel that coasted on brand recognition. Black Ops 6 launched in 2024, set in 1991 during the Gulf War, and it's a perfect example of how critics and players can see the same game completely differently. The campaign follows a rogue CIA team led by Frank Woods and Russell Adler as they uncover a conspiracy involving a mole within the agency. You play as Case, a new operative with mysterious ties to the previous game's events. The story brings back classic Black Ops mind games with multiple plot twists, unreliable narrators, and connections to the larger mythology. The campaign features safe house hubs where you can choose your loadout, interact with teammates, and select missions in different orders. The campaign got widespread praise for returning to classic Black Ops storytelling. Multiplayer brought back the beloved Pick-10 Create-a-Class system, and round-based zombies returned with 2 launch maps featuring the Mystery Box and Pack-a-Punch. Players are telling a completely different story. Steam reviews dropped to mixed, with only 64% positive ratings. and the game lost a staggering 47% of its player base since launch. That's the fastest player decline in Call of Duty history.